Hi everyone, welcome to week 8 of the Sober Sessions. Can you believe that? It's week 8, that's how long we've been doing it. We're like a weekly staple in your sober diet now. So we're going to be talking a little bit about breaking habits, changing mindset, and something I like to call making a freedom plan. Like, how do you make a plan to move forward into a better life and into a real, true and lasting change? And I was just doing a live, which is why this is kind of fresh in my head, and I wanted to get the panel's ideas and the things that work for them around this as well. But one of the things that worked really well for me was, particularly in the early days when I was having cravings and triggers coming up, was actually having an alternative trigger and looking at the reasons why I thought I liked to drink. So I thought I liked to drink for de-stressing myself, for relaxation, for having fun, and then finding things that actually would deliver me the same outcome. Like, what were they? Healthy things. Like going for a run was a huge one for me, and drawing up some alternative triggers that I could turn to. And something I shared recently was around doing star jumps when you have a craving, and that's working for a lot of people. So those sort of tactics can be really useful, and also looking at the language we use with ourselves when we're saying things like, well, I can't stop drinking, I've got to have a drink, I've got to give in to this craving. Adding words to the end, like, but I can't stop drinking, but I'm working on it, but I'm showing up. You know, just by being here, you're showing up, which is awesome. And I call it a freedom plan, and it's a bit like a sober toolbox. It's bespoke for everybody. And I actually drew mine out. I was very clear on the goal that I wanted to get to, and I knew I needed to work on changing my mindset. And it all stemmed from, well, what were my original beliefs about alcohol? What were the outcomes I thought I was getting from it? Where can I get those outcomes elsewhere in a healthy way? And how can I make my environment safe so I'm not going to be triggered to drink? And by environment, I mean the people, the places, the sights, the smells, the tastes, all these things that can cause a trigger, and protecting myself around that. So if you're in the early stages, definitely making a freedom plan and mapping out in your journal, if you're journaling every day, is a really awesome step towards feeling really empowered in terms of what you're doing. And it's like anything, when you feel like you've got a problem, not that I like to call it a problem, you always feel better when you've got a plan. So it'd be cool to sort of hear some of the views from the panel around how you planned, because they do say fail to prepare, prepare to fail, as a phrase. And I think it's true. You know, we need to put that work in, we need to show up. And it's like anything, it's like learning a new skill. You think of a professional sports person, they weren't top of their game the first time they picked up a tennis racket or kicked a football. They had to practice, they had setbacks, they had to grow, they had to develop. You know, they probably did smash their tennis racket on the court a few times in frustration, but I bet they learned, and I bet they grew from it. So I don't know who on the panel wants to talk first around kind of changing habits, changing behaviour, and making a plan for freedom. Anyone? Any hands up there? If
I
not,
just have a question for you, Simon, first, about when you first set your goal. Were you like, right, this is a forever goal plan, or was it like, right, I'm going to do 100 days, or I'm going to do today? Like, what was your methodology to kind of, start out?
Well, see, I think because of my ADHD, I'd got a little bit obsessed about it, and I was very much, this is it. I don't want to drink anymore. I've realised what it's been doing to me, that I've been putting it in front of all the important things in my life, and it's been causing destruction. So I was very much, I don't want that in my life anymore, in the relationship. But initially I did 30 days just to say, well, that's a kind of bite-size period that I can get through. But it was very much in my mind that it was a forever decision. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, this is why I think now I realise that why I kind of went back to drinking after a year, because I think I had that as an unconscious kind of goal, that like, if I could do a year, then I didn't have a problem. So it was like, that was kind of the thing of like, right, I need some distance, I need some space. Like, if I can do a year, I don't have a problem somewhere in my brain. So I was very, very committed to, doing that year. That was kind of, to have a proper detox, do a year. And then the second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, those were more about kind of driven very much like reaction. So it was like, okay, I was reading a blog the other day and I was like, I wonder actually whether my insomnia was kind of psychosomatic to help me stop drinking, or whether it was an issue, because I had this kind of like deal with myself. It was like, right, when I go back to drinking, it's like, right, when I start waking up at 4 again, then I'll quit. And then so every 3 months or so I'd start waking up at 4 again, and it would start to like, I'd be drinking more and more, and it start to escalate, and then I'd stop again. And then the last time, it definitely was like, I'm done. I'm done. And then it was like searching for that lifestyle change, like, right, what do I need to make this my life? And I think that the thing that I didn't have the first few times was that real kind of friendship, community, like mates, like people to hang out with. Because it was a really important part of my life, going out, going to raves, going to clubs, all that sort of stuff, like, and music, and that thing of like never being able to do that. But I had to find another way to do it, and so that's definitely been the major changer, I think.
And finding the same outcomes from something else. And one of the things I was going to say today, I'm kind of springing this on everybody, but in one of the other groups I work in, we do a couple of lives every week, and I've been saying to anyone in the group, and I'm going to throw it out there, if anybody, no, don't worry, it's not cringy, but if anyone, I've been getting people to make a pledge, like if they're in the early days, to say, do you know what, I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to make myself accountable to the community, like Mandy sort of just said about the sense of community, that I'm not going to drink until the next live. Like, if you just want a bite-sized one, I'm just going to say it right now. So if you feel like you're strong enough, confident enough to say that in the comments, that you're not going to drink until the next live, then you say it on the next one if you feel ready there. And I think that might be a nice thing to do. We can maybe shout people out who are owning it and doing that.
Yeah, so if you want to commit to that, then put it in the comments so that you will.
I thought you said to the next life.
Or the next life. The
not that yet. Yeah, why not?
I mean, that's a commitment.
You do it to the next life.
I think it's such a good idea that to kind of to have something to commit to. So many people kind of just, and I really feel for them when they're just hoping and praying that they don't drink today. And, like having a plan, like you say, or just having that commitment. It doesn't have to be forever, does it? It's so scary when you first stop drinking. The thought of forever is like, you can't imagine a life where you don't drink. So definitely having that commitment, I think, will make a huge difference. I'll commit. I'm in.
Well, we're all not going to drink till the next 7 days.
We're not going to drink.
Not the next life, the next sober sessions.
Well, I can guarantee I won't drink to the next life. But what happened to me
how would you, Dave?
I ain't got long of I by the stage. What I was going to say was someone randomly out of the blue must have seen me around Christmas time, a good friend, and he sent me a text message, and it was literally, how about you join me in giving up alcohol for 3 months? And I did laugh about it. I think I've told you this before. But because it was enough time, it wasn't like for the next week, it was a bit of a chunk. But after a while, I think a couple of weeks, I sort of reassessed it and thought, if I start again in 3 months, it will literally be no time at all until I started again. And then I committed to myself 500 days. And guess what? Next Thursday is my 500 days. Yes, get in there. But I agree with you, Simon, like small chunks is brilliant. So for people to think till the next live, we haven't got one in the week this week, have we? It's next Saturday. So that's 7 days to say to yourself, you're not going to have a drink, and then be accountable to us, put it in the comments and that. Right, and that's a really, really strong affirmation almost for people to stick to. I think that's a brilliant idea, young man.
Well,
and we
Anna,
can give
You know
everyone a
what
shout.
else though? Just to pick up on what Lisa said, you know, if you don't have a plan, because I tried it the first time I tried it without a plan. And the plan was, like Lisa said, just to hope I didn't drink, and I didn't want to drink. And then, and this is a little bit like what you were saying as well, Mandy, then I told everybody this another time, but then I found out I was pregnant, and that was easy then. It's like, oh, well, I can go 9 months without a drink, no problem. And the rest of it, you know, like, that's it, it's fine. And just not having that self-care plan, as in the self-development stuff. Like, just because you can take a year off, or just because you can take time off during pregnancy, or take time off because you're working, it doesn't mean you've not got a dependency. That's willpower. That's willpower. And the fact that there is something at the end of it that you're working towards. And you've got to make your commitment to not drinking also something that you're working towards. And it has to start with self-development, because you can't expect, as Simon was saying, to come out really good at something without practicing. And it's not natural to us. Your subconscious is trained to reach in for a drink when you're not coping. You've got to retrain your subconscious. You've got to change those habits and go for healthier strategies. So I think alongside when you're stopping, don't think just because you've not drank for 30 days or 60 days, 90 days that you've done it. Because if you don't come across something big in that time, it can catch you off guard. And there's so many people during this lockdown who've been stopped for months and they've lapsed, and it's because they've been complacent in the fact that they've not drank, they've had no major crises happen, something happens, it's thrown them off. So I think you need to be doing this self-preparation. So, you know, whether that be alongside your exercise, for me, I have to say, I still now have a sober book on the go, and I'm not reading it every night, or, you know, reading like I was at the beginning, but it's there, and it's slowed down, but it's still there. Practice, keep working on yourself. I think that's massively important.
There's something quite important there as well. When you're talking about being able to stop for extended periods, like when you were pregnant. So when I was out in Iraq, it was totally dry out there, so there was no booze. So I stopped easily for that period. But I think that also highlights the extent to which the craving is actually, it's a conscious thought process you go through. And one of the reasons it can be easier if you're pregnant or you're somewhere where there's just no alcohol at all is because you don't have that choice. So the craving process starts when you start entertaining the possibility of having a drink, and then you start fantasizing about it. But when that possibility just isn't there, it's so much easier. So for you being pregnant, for me being out in Iraq where there was no booze anyway, it's hugely easier. But for all of us now, we're in the mindset where we're not going to drink. So we never start thinking, oh, what would it be like if I had a drink tonight? So we don't go through the craving process.
Right.
I think that's really important. I think the other point to make, a week is an excellent time period, because after a week, your brain chemistry is starting to get back to normal a bit, and that physical anxiety that you can relieve by having another drink starting to dissipate, and hopefully you'll be starting to sleep a bit better. So you're in a much better place mentally. You're starting to get a bit more resilience and a bit more confidence, which again, I always liken it to if you're trying to push a massive boulder up a slight rise and then off the side of a hill. It starts off really hard work, then momentum takes over, and then you're off, it's gone.
You're all so wise today.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work out his chair, actually.
It looks so relaxed, doesn't it? It's like
a gaming
a gamer,
chair
a proper gamer.
So he's still getting younger and younger, and he is now, and like
Teenager.
Now, yeah.
There's a question, is the Mandy?
Yeah, someone in the comments actually picked up on this. So they say, why is there such a battle between subconscious and the conscious mind? I have that annoying voice in my ear at the moment.
So the subconscious is that automated reaction thing. So if you do something all the time with the same response, it becomes automated. But the subconscious, it's a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, so it might be you get in from work and put your bag, well, not at the moment, obviously, but whatever it is that triggers that first drink, it's that initial reaction. But that isn't the problem. That is just the thought of, oh, I'll open a bottle of wine, or I'll crack the beers open, or whatever it is. The main problem is what comes after that. And it's if you start thinking, wow, wouldn't it be a perfect world if I could pour myself a drink, and then really fantasizing about having one, that's where you have a problem. So I think you do need to differentiate between the subconscious and the actual conscious craving cycle. Now, often how we experience it is as one, because I don't know what it is, but let's say you're used to cracking a drink open, you get up in the morning, you go for a walk on lockdown, and then you come back and open the alcohol. That coming in the front door is your trigger, and then you start craving. So it's one conscious thing. It's one total package that you get, but it is worth breaking it down into its constituent parts. And the subconscious isn't a massive issue, because it's just putting the thought of an alcoholic drink into your conscious mind. But it's what you do consciously with that thought afterwards that is the issue.
Yeah, and there it comes back to what William said about Iraq. I mean, that is one way to get sober, move to Iraq. But it's your environment as well. Like, you come through the front door, if there's no alcohol in the house and you've got some nice alternative drinks, you're sort of set for success. So actually having your environment set up correctly and taking the necessary steps to protect yourself is also key in that freedom plan. Like, being really honest with yourself. What do I need here? Do I need to give my partner my debit cards, my credit cards? Do I need to, not allow myself to do whatever it is, whatever behaviour, not drive past the off licence every evening if it's a trigger, but identifying it and being honest.
It's odd because I always said that in the beginning, that I went to bed early, but that helped me not think about having a drink, because once I was in bed about to watch a film, it helped me so much because I wasn't in my usual environment. So that's another thing you can do.
I
Go
used
to
to
bed
do
at
that
4 in the afternoon.
Yeah. So our guests are here now, Simon. Do you want me to introduce them?
Yeah, you go ahead. Over to you.
So we've got Tawny Lara and Lisa Smith, and they do a recovery podcast. And Lisa Smith is actually the author of Go What's Out of the Bar. They're just about to join us now, so they won't know what we've been talking about, I don't think. So, Simon, are you going to carry on from there once they're in?
Yeah, we should definitely shout. Mandy, I don't know if you can shout out anyone who's committed to the staying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll go back through.
Hey!
Oh,
Hi,
God.
ladies.
We are so sorry.
What happened?
We must have Googled the time change, first of all. Fresh out of bed. We Googled the time change. We went back and forth like 5 times. I was like, what time is it? She Googled it. I Googled it. Are we on GMT?
Yeah, but we're +1 because we've just had our summer saving hour.
Oh.
So
We're so sorry. And we've been so excited. We're so sorry for being late.
Honestly, don't worry. Google does it wrong sometimes. So I had to check it and double check it and triple check it when I sent it, because I was thinking, is it 11? Is it 12? Is it 8? Is it 9?
Oh my God.
Please don't worry. You're here now, and that's all that matters. So
We're thrilled. Oh my gosh.
yeah, we're really pleased to have you. We're just about to do a little shout out. I think Mandy's going to do it. Has anyone said they're going to commit? We're just asking who's committing for the next week to staying sober, and then you're on, ladies. So I hope you're ready.
Okay, so Annalise says, I'm in. Crystal Cat says, I can commit to that. I'm trying to get my first 30 days done. So, and accountability will help. Thanks, Simon. There's no way I will drink before now in the next live. And I can do this. Joanne, next Saturday, 30 days. Yes, 100%. So, yeah, people are on it. So, well done.
We've got our eye on you.
Yeah, we're watching you
guys.
guys.
Be watching.
So should we just go around and introduce ourselves and then introduce, so hi Lisa, hi Tawny. Nice
Hi.
to meet you. So I'm Mandy, so I do a podcast in the UK called Love Sober with Kate, but she's not here today, she's not feeling very well. So who else?
You know me and Lisa already, Lisa.
I do.
And Tawny, we've not met you, but
Hi.
We're Sober Experiment.
Hi, I did a thorough stalking of all of you yesterday, so it's nice to see you face to face.
Oh, brilliant.
Feel
What
like
did
old
you find?
friends.
Anything dodgy?
Yeah. Yes.
I can't believe you asked that question, Dave. It's like,
So yeah, that's Dave.
Yeah, I'm Dave.
Dave.
William in the gaming chair.
William there, and I'm Simon from Be Sober.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
So please introduce yourselves and to the community that are watching. So we're live on Facebook at the moment.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Smith. I am author of Girl Walks Out of a Bar, and I am also a newly minted She Recovers recovery coach.
Oh, congratulations, like me.
Yeah, thank you. I know, we're together in that. And I'm also the co-host of Recovery Rocks with my poddess here, Tawny. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Tawny. I live in a very scary New York City right now. It's not a fun time to be a New Yorker, but I've been sober for 4.5 years now, and my life got better. Everything got better. It's not perfect all the time, of course, nothing is, but everything has improved since I quit drinking. I'm a freelance writer. I teach writing classes. Writing is my whole world. And when I'm in the creative lens, when I'm not writing, I am podcasting with Lisa.
So you just did a podcast about grocery store anxiety. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think a few of us have listened to it now, haven't we? A few of us.
Yeah.
I listened to it on my bike ride this morning.
Because your stores, particularly you in Tony in New York, your stores are quite small stores, aren't they? So I guess that part of the anxiety that we're going to talk about comes from the fact that you're not managing to get maybe the fresh kind of food you would want to get hold of, and when you do want to get them, there's massive queues, that kind of thing. Do you want to share between you both what your podcast was about and why you decided to sort of discuss it, really? Because I think it's probably quite similar over here in the UK for a lot of people, particularly if you're in smaller towns where you haven't got access to the bigger supermarkets.
Yeah, it's very scary. I think in bigger cities, not just New York City. I mean, everything is smaller. So, we don't have these huge grocery stores we can go to. So we're, in our, few block radius, we have some small markets, and there's, we're one in, one out. My partner and I, we usually go grocery shopping together. We can't do that anymore because it is one in, one out. So we take turns, and I'm always sad when it's my time to go, because it's very stressful. It's so small, and there's only like 6 of us allowed at a time. And then, so I feel like I have this sense of urgency, this rush to like get my groceries. So, cause I look at this long line of people, I'm like, well, they need to get their groceries too. And then I'm also like, I also don't like being here. It's required here. You have to shop with gloves on. I don't know if it's like that out where you guys are, but so mask and gloves, you will not be allowed in. And then, just even, we don't have a car to put our groceries in. So we're, carrying bags or pushing a cart. And it's just, all of it is just massively anxiety producing. I usually cry on my way home from the grocery store. Like, just by the time I leave, I'm just like, like, it's done. It's just like this release. I didn't realize my whole body was so tense while I was in there. It's really tough.
I really get this. I live in a local village, and there's there's 2 shops in particular that make me feel really uneasy. Now, it's not essential that we have to wear gloves and masks to go to the shop at the moment. And I'm hoping it isn't. It's just something, even that just makes me feel anxious. Seeing people with gloves and masks on just makes me feel really uneasy. And I think it's the thinking about, I don't know, I just really get it. Like, we're lined up in a shop and it's just weird. I feel robotic, like I'm in a weird movie, and it's just awful. And I can't even imagine how bad it must be over there. Is it like that where you are as well, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, the word I think of most often to associate with it is dystopian. You know, it's like if you had taken a snapshot of us shopping in January at the beginning of the year and showed us a picture of what it looks like outside and inside with the people moving around the store now, I would have said that's out of a movie. Like, that's not real.
Yeah.
So it's a very weird thing to, I feel like in a way I almost like turn it off when I go, like I put like this shield up to go in to do it, to pretend it's not as messed up as it is when it's totally awful and bizarre and scary. And then when I get out, I just find, and here I'm in Southern California now, and you know, I'm, for the first time after 30 years in New York City, I shop in supermarkets with big aisles, but they're not that big. Like, you can't maintain, you know, and there's people waiting outside to get in, and you wait in line, spaced, unless you time it exactly right. And it is just so far from anything I think we ever thought we'd see in our lives, to be honest, that it is, when I come home and I unpack the groceries and I let like that wall I put up to go out there down, I just feel like it's almost like disoriented. Like, it is, I think I said this on the podcast, it is, my whole day is shot. Like, that's it. If I go grocery shopping, like, that's the one thing I really do that day, because I have almost like an emotional hangover from it afterwards. And it's
I
like,
get it.
It's sad. It's really sad.
That's what I was just going to say, the sadness of it. What I'm finding the hardest about going to the shops is I've got 3 children and 2 of them are too young to leave at home. So I take 2 of them with me if I have to go to the shop. That in itself is just stressful, knowing as soon as I get in the queue, I'm going to be asked, because my daughter looks quite old for her age. So the first thing they do is they say to us, 1 per household. Now, they don't worry about the really little one, but that makes her anxious to come with me. So I have to fight with her to get her to come with me in the first place, because she doesn't want them confronting her. Then when you do get in there, children with me, I'm getting terrible looks off people because they think she's older as well, and I'm breaking. Do you see? So then I'm feeling nervous and anxious and not enjoying myself. And then, more often than not, you have to queue through the alcohol aisle to get to the checkout, and you spend far longer than you ever would normally in that aisle. So I get it. The whole process, not only does it build up your anxiety and it puts you in positions that you wouldn't be in, but it is quite sad as well, because my children are learning that we don't speak to anybody, we're not looking at anybody, we're just walking past them, we're getting in, we're getting out, people aren't very nice to you anymore, and the whole act of going out to the shops isn't pleasant.
You know, the alcohol aisle thing, this I think is really difficult for people. Every single store that I've gone to, I never say store, I'm just saying it because you two are on. I say shop normally.
We can stop.
Every time I go, it's that long queue in the alcohol aisle. So you find yourself looking. Now, I think I'm really strong in my sobriety. I really am. But even I have stood there thinking about this alcohol, looking at it, thinking about times I would have picked up that bottle or this bottle, and, you know, going that. So it must be so difficult for people. Do you have that? Can you buy alcohol in your grocery stores? Because in Canada, you can't, can you? You've got to buy it separately. So do you have to queue in the alcohol aisle?
I don't. No. I cannot. You can't buy liquor at a store in New York City. There's liquor stores, but you can buy beer and wine.
Right.
But it's still like those aisles are so just challenging.
And also, when you see, like, I am totally evaluating everyone else's cart all the time. Like, are you hoarding something? You know, do you have too much toilet paper in your basket for my approval? Do you know? But sometimes when you see people, like, I have seen people who are clearly shopping for themselves, clearly alone, with multiple bottles of wine coming out of the grocery store, and I'm just thinking, I mean, I just want to kind of, you know, hug them and say, it's okay, you don't have to do it. But it's hard, because I know before I got sober, I mean, if I were in this situation, it would have been terrifying to me to have to have that cut off, like if I couldn't. And, I just worry, I really worry, because it is between, not just in the stores, which it certainly is, but also just everywhere you look. It's, quarantini time and, Zoom happy hour and what's the cocktail tonight. And it's just normalizing so much solo drinking alone in your apartment that I worry how hard it's going to be to think about, going back, because it's going to leave, this whole situation is going to leave us with a lot to process after as it is. And I worry that a lot of people are going to come out of it with a new drinking problem.
Well, we talk quite a lot here about sort of giving people tools and giving, them a toolbox to kind of use and stuff like that. So, was anxiety part of your drinking story? And if it was, then what tools do you use to balance that out so you don't get triggered, or that you don't, start again?
You want to take that?
Either of you?
Yeah, anxiety and depression were huge parts of why I self-medicated, and, in a way still self-medicate by other things. I mean, work addiction is a huge problem for me that I struggle with, because it is a form of escapism. But, that something that really keeps me grounded is, like these tropes that we hear in meetings and everything is like, where are my feet? Identify and count 5 things in the room. Grab something, like feel something, anything that gets you in your body and out of your head, even if just for a minute, can be so calming and so soothing.
Yeah,
it's funny, that we're talking about the social distancing and going to the supermarket, because we've been in lockdown for I think 8 weeks now. It's like a big day out for me, because where we're not allowed to go as a couple, we have to go on our own, and we take it in turns. I end up looking around the frying pan section.
Just be away from the kids.
A day out for me. It's like, yes, I can look at all these frying pans. But I think Mark made a really fair point, actually, saying that she's having a hard time finding non-alcoholic beer during this time and having to search for it in the alcohol section. And where I am, it's bang smack where all the lagers were that I used to drink, like the Stellas and the Peronis, and next to that are the Heineken Zeros and that. Yeah. And that could be something to look into for the supermarkets,
Yeah, I have actually.
Corner or something.
I have actually complained,
numerous times, Mandy,
activists, because it's really ridiculous, like that they don't have, like, there are, I think some supermarkets are starting now, but they don't sort of, you have your gluten-free aisle, you have your dairy-free aisle, you should have an alcohol-free aisle, and like that, it's separated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do have a whole section.
And they look the same, so you could really easily just, like pick up the wrong thing. So I'd be interested to know from Lisa what's in your kind of, what tools do you use to kind of manage your anxiety?
I have I've been doing 12 steps since I got sober 16 years ago. So I pull out that stuff all the time. Like Tawny said, where are your feet? I try to meditate. I have to say I was really good about meditation early in all of this, and I've fallen off that sort of wagon again, and I know I need to go back to it. And basically the thing that really has helped the most, and I shouldn't be surprised because it's helped the most in the past too, is just connecting, reaching out to somebody else. Like doing service, in particular, calling a newcomer. My 12-step sponsor would always say to me, if you think you have problems, call a newcomer and listen to theirs and get out of your head, when I feel like my head is a bad neighborhood. But I have also discovered new diversions. I was never a reality TV watcher before at all, and sort of given, I think whatever keeps you sober in this time is the right thing, right? And I find I've discovered, and Tawny and I have shared a lot about this. We're watching some of the same shows, and I found wow, that gets me straight out of my head. I would have never thought. Last night, I texted Tawny last night because I was like, have you seen Married at First Sight? I just saw an episode. I don't think I can stop. I'm going to be here all weekend, you know? So, but I would have been like, oh, that's just trash TV. You know what? It gets me out of my head. I'm all good. If I spend the whole weekend in front of Married at First Sight and not picking up a drink or obsessing about the possibility of picking up a drink, that's a winner, you know? So I think I have been open to diversions and distractions that I might not have been before.
Well,
but there's the other thing that when me and Simon were talking the other day, that when we were drinking, we would never be able to concentrate on something like that, or with a film. I was always putting it on at 3 o'clock the next morning when I was waking up my night terrors, because I couldn't remember the end, and I couldn't focus on a box set because I just was lost in oblivion. So it's
That's
really
so
good
funny.
to get into something.
That's so funny. You know, my husband's showing me films at the moment, and he said, you know, we've watched this. And I'm like, no, we haven't. And he said, no, really, we have. You've just a bottle of wine in before we started. And I'm watching films. It's great in a way because, like, it's the first time for me. I've got a whole lifetime of films to get through. So, but yeah, it's so true. I don't know how many films I've fallen asleep in the middle of, or just turned on YouTube and forgotten about it. Yeah, good point.
I mean, I think that's one of the problems for people in lockdown is that, you know, you've got so far in kind of resourcing yourself, you know, to manage your emotions, or like, okay, like I go for a run, like I go to yoga. I mean, I know that for Kate, who's not here today, but like yoga is an absolute resource of mental well-being for her, and now she can't go. And not only like that difference of kind of, you know, co-regulating with other people, it's different doing yoga at home than it is when you're like with other people. And, you know, so it is that kind of like, I think people, it's really scary to be like, oh my God, like I need to find something else to do now. But it's like, you know, take it as a challenge and just be, and be open to it, you know. And like, I think we get really wrapped up on what we're supposed to do, or what's cool, or what's adult, or, you know, and it's like, well, whatever works. I mean, I've been doing jigsaw puzzles. Amazing. Like, I'm not going to, like, you know, it doesn't ruin my reputation. You know what I mean? It's just like fantastic. Like me and my husband have sat like one afternoon doing a 1,500 piece jigsaw puzzle, and it was like actual proper flow. Like I really like zoned out and was just like, where the sky is really difficult, you know. So it's like, just don't like write anything off, you know. And I think what you said, Lisa, before, it's like, you know, what worked in the past, it's like we've all got tools that we had at some point in our life, whether we were really young or whether when we got sober before, you know, there are sort of keys back there. So like, you know, just think like what's worked in the past to kind of, that I enjoyed or gave me that release, because it's alcohol is just one thing, and there's so many different things you can do.
And also another thing to kind of continue on from what Mandy's saying there as well is, I always encourage people to think back to a time when they were so determined to do something. Like it could have been moving house, changing jobs, having a baby. Like they were just doing it. Nothing was going to stop me. I'm going to do it. And they did it, no matter what got in their way. And like try and apply that same mentality, that same mindset, and know that, because I think we've all got something that was hard that we have done, and that nothing was going to stop us. And actually sort of draw on that to know that you have got that resolve, you have got that inner strength. And I love that phrase. I can't remember which one of you, I think it was Lisa said, like, get out of your head. You know, if you're making a plan, what else can you get out of your head on? You know, like even if it's a jigsaw, I have word games on my phone and I get just immersed in them. So
frying pan shopping. That's
frying pan shopping. I mean, who knew, Dave?
I know.
I bet it's so he covers up his pants. So he can cover up his pants on the way out of the supermarket. That's why he's buying those frying pans.
Exactly.
And I will, because I'm in France, if you don't know, so we're slightly ahead in kind of what's going on in the UK and what's going on in the US. So obviously it kind of spread through Italy, through France, and then over. So like today is the first day of kind of deconfinement, like there's opening stuff up again. So just let everyone know, like today I went on the beach and I went in the sea. It was freezing cold, 15 degrees, but I was like, I don't care, like, because we look at the beach every day and it's been empty, silent for 2 months, and it's actually, you don't realize how much these things affect you. And then all of a sudden, like, I can hear laughter again, and I can see people running around. You're not allowed to sit down, but you're allowed to like run around or go in the water.
That's what they do at the beach here now. It was
Yeah.
it's been closed for anything but exercise. And so now, like, I just love, one of the things I started, you mentioned yoga, and I had just gotten back into doing hot yoga when all this hit. And immediately, my husband's a doctor, and before we got locked down, he was like, the yoga's got to go. Like, you're not going and sweating and breathing people in that room. And I was like, but I just finally got back to it and I love it. And so I started walking, just taking walks, like not putting pressure on myself about how far I went or how fast I went or whatever, because I tend to get that, you know, we do that like perfectionist thing and our, you know, obsessive thing on whatever it is we're doing. And I realized how much, like, now I start to see the surfers out on the coast here and I miss them. I just wanted to be like, hey guys, we're back. You know, and it makes a difference. I just feel like these things, we've all had to kind of feel our way. I wish I had a good table for jigsaw puzzles, because I would love to be doing jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah,
and I love crossword puzzles.
I mean, the cat is quite problematic because she will just sit like right in the middle of it, you know, and just, you know, it's that proper, I am the queen of this house. It's like, you're on the... We have a question here about that romanticizing that we were talking about earlier. Just before you joined, we were kind of talking about habit change and unconscious and conscious thought, and we have a question here saying I still romanticize the thought of drinking. I'm out walking the dog and there are lots of people sitting and drinking and chatting in the park, and I found myself checking out what they're drinking. Everyone was drinking alcohol. How do I stop this? Why can't I do that battle in my head?
Tawny, you want to take that? Or?
Sure. I mean, I think we could both speak to this. That is so common, and I can say 4.5 years later, I still do it. There's, you know, our podcast called Recovery Rocks. Lisa and I love rock and roll. We could talk about it for hours. You know, I still romanticize these images of, you know, Keith Richards turning up a bottle of Jack Daniels and Slash with his top hat and chugging whiskey. Like, these are still images that, like, I grew up, my father's a heavy metal musician. So like, I grew up in that world. So I still, in a sense, idolize that, which I know is very unhealthy for being sober, but it's also such a part of like my youth and my culture and like everything that like I grew up around. So it's tough to separate that. I mean, whether, you know, even just as a drinker, you know, that was like, whoever asked this question, you know, alcohol might have been how they socialized, how they made friends, how they let loose after work, you know, it's like that, it's so common, and we all still struggle with it. So it's really just the whole replacing it. So it's like, okay, you can't go to happy hour after work. What can you do? Like, can you go to yoga instead? Can you and a coworker grab tea? Obviously it's different times right now, so you can't go grab tea with a friend, but you know, it's the same. It's a very similar thing. It's just the act of replacing that really made a big difference for me, where, you know, I was a party girl, and I still like to say I'm a party girl that just doesn't drink anymore. You know, I go out, I go to concerts, I'm headbanging, and I wake up with a really sore neck the next day, but I'm not drinking. And, you know, these things are possible. You just have to find, you know, healthy replacements and healthy people that love and support your sobriety, because you can't do it alone. Like, we've all tried, you know, you do need that community of people, and they don't even have to be sober people. It's just people that respect your choice to not drink.
Yeah. I would say that it reminds me of when after I've been sober for a little while, people used to say to me, like, don't you just miss a glass of wine at dinner? And I at first I'd be like, yeah, I kind of do. And then I would think about it like, wait a minute, let's be real. What are we talking about here? I never had a glass of wine at dinner. I might have had 2 glasses of wine maybe, but then one of two things happened. Either I went home and opened a bottle to drink by myself when I got home, or I spent the entire dinner thinking, if I order a third glass, is this person going to think I'm an alcoholic? You know, okay, let me watch how much, like controlling the mind control that goes into the obsession is more exhausting than being sober after a while. It's just easier for me, I find, but also like playing that tape through, like, okay, if I was like, you know what, I've had a hard week where I'm freaked out about everything that's going on, and my friends are getting together on a Zoom happy hour, and I'm going to join them, and maybe I could have a glass of wine. Well, that's when, you know, as my sponsor would always say, play the tape through. What happens? Okay, I have that glass of wine, then what? Then I have another. Or then I just sit there and think about how much I want another. And then it takes over. And maybe at first I wouldn't, you know, I always say like, maybe I could have a glass of wine, you know, for a week. But I know for me, like, that's not how I ever drank. So it won't be long until I'm back to the second glass. Wait, are they going to think I'm an alcoholic if I have the third? Now I'm going to stop at the liquor store, and I'm going to different liquor stores so that nobody thinks I'm in the liquor store every night. Like the owners even care who I am. And, you know, and then I'm right back to where I was and worse. And when I play that tape through of what actually happens, you know, by the end of it, I'm up for 3 days, you know, on a Coke binge and, you know, wondering what happened. So I know it doesn't end well for me. So that's why if I think about what that really means, then it's easier. It's easier for me to go, okay, wait, no, let me just change channel in my head and go do something else.
I love that, playing it forwards, and it comes back to what we've talked about previously, William, about the fantasy that creates over time, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that a lot of this as well, I think it's worth getting things in perspective and just remembering what you're dealing with here. So alcohol is just a drug, and in terms of how it makes you feel, it's actually right down the bottom end of the scale. There are drugs that like really make you feel happy and brilliant. Alcohol doesn't really do that to you. It just makes you feel slightly dulled and confused. The reason it's so prevalent, and you do get this a lot, it's like, yeah, but it's such a big part of our culture and, you know, my childhood and all the rest of it. The only reason it's such a big part of it is because in terms of drugs, it's fairly easy to make. If you look at stuff like crystal meth, it's quite a delicate chemical process, and it's very hard to get hold of the chemicals. For alcohol, all you need is a load of rotting fruit or vegetables. So the only reason it's so prevalent is because it's very, very easy to make it. As I say, it doesn't actually do a lot. And if you are walking along, for example, and there's people sat there in the park having a drink, what's good about that situation? Is it the fact that they're outside with friends enjoying their company? Or is it the fact that they're taking a drug that's dulling their senses slightly and greatly accelerating their heart rate, which makes them feel increasingly lethargic and then ruins their night's sleep? And I think you can start working on taking the drug out of the situation and seeing the situation for what it is. And I think that there's another way you can come at this as well, because a lot of the time when we look at those situations, we idolize them about alcohol. So we make it all about the alcohol. But actually, you can take the alcohol out of it and see that the situation is actually entirely pleasant without it. But actually, when you go in a bit more detail, a lot of the time, the alcohol starts to ruin the situation. Because from a practical perspective, if you're sat in the park with someone having a drink, presumably you're going to need to go to the toilet in about 20 minutes. And that again with concerts. And it's like, oh yeah, but the concert's not the same if you're not drinking. My memory of concerts was either queuing at a bar or trying to get to the toilet. So actually, a lot of these situations, it's not that alcohol makes it, alcohol actually just destroys it. And the fantasy you have, the best way of achieving that perfect situation is to actually take alcohol out of it entirely.
Mm-hmm. I have to say that is, it absolutely reminds me of a way I learned to look at alcohol after I got sober, which was and people go to parties because they want to be social and see friends and do all that, and they have a drink or two because, you know, they want to kind of relax. It makes it easier to have a conversation, whatever. And they're there for, you know, they're there for for the party, and you know, the alcohol is something that helps them. And for me, for parties, I was there for the alcohol, and the humans were like incidental to the whole situation. Like it was a great way for me to be able to drink without feeling observed, judged, whatever it was. And I'll take the humans along with that if I have to deal with that. But really, for me, a party was about alcohol, it was not about company or other people.
So true. So true, isn't it? We've got a question here. This is going to differ from everybody, so we'll go around everyone and we'll just get your opinion and then maybe talk about why. This is from Jane in Japan. Hello, she's up late watching us.
Hi, Jane.
Yeah. Do you think that being sober is easier or harder in lockdown? I'll go first. I don't find it any different, I'll be honest with you. I think you get to a point where you have enough coping strategies that things don't affect whether you find it easier or harder. I've also seen people on Facebook, some finding it harder because of the stress and they want to numb it out, some finding it easier because they haven't got the same access to it. So let's go round. We'll go around the panel first. Go, Dave.
Well, I'm the same as you, Alex. Because I think I told you last week that when I gave up drinking, and you, Simon, you wrote a divorce letter. So Lisa and Tawny, I looked, the analogy I had with alcohol was that it was a seductive young blonde that lured me in. And every time I saw her, she was like wooing me over and that. But towards the end, she was betraying me and being unfaithful. And in the end, I booted her out the door. So whenever she started tapping on, Dave, you know you want me, I'm like, get out of town. And so I haven't actually thought about it at all, but I can understand, like, for some people, I mean, we got triplets here, and that's enough to turn you to drink. But I just, for me personally, it's been all right. I haven't thought about it, but again, that's the mindset. Because of my ugly, fat, revolting divorce that I've had, get out of here. I'm all right.
What about you, Simon?
See, I do a lot of coaching, as you guys know, with people, and this has come up so much. So I'm going to answer it from the perspective of the people I've spoken to. And I'd say it's a pretty even split between some people who are literally saying, I'm so happy, I don't want it to end because it's helping me be in an environment where it's hard to get the alcohol, there's no social situations, I'm not having to make excuses to people, I'm just not going out, I'm not even being drawn to the pub because it's shut. And then other people who are finding challenges around boredom, loneliness, and not, you know, and in those instances, that's where we need to be looking for the things that light us up, the things that can bring us joy in this time and keeping busy. So I'm seeing an even split. If that had happened a week after I'd quit, I think I would have been okay with it. I'd have probably just turned it to my advantage and used it to get the best out of it. I think in most cases that it is actually an easier way to certainly in early sobriety, to kind of harness the power of it and turn it into an opportunity. Like every cloud has a silver lining.
Yeah.
Who's next?
There's some fear about coming out though then, isn't there? There's some fear.
There is some anxiety about coming out, yeah. Sure.
What about my Lisa? I'm going to say my Lisa so that we can differentiate. Go on.
Oh, no, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm a bit the same as you. I've not really seen it as any different. Like, I think I'm just at the point now where I just wouldn't dream of picking up a drink. It just wouldn't cross my mind for any emotion. So lockdown itself for me has been up and down. I have some good days, I have some bad days. I'm a bit like, but I just wouldn't think about drinking. So I don't know. I can't really answer that. It's just the same. That's probably no use to anybody. Sorry, guys.
William.
So, I mean, for me, it's exactly the same. I just don't have any interest in drinking anymore. So whatever it is, it doesn't really get harder or easier, to be honest. It is just what it is. It's just no longer a part of my life. But I have to say, because when I drank, I used to like drinking on my own. If I got dragged to a party, I'd drink there. But my idyllic situation was at home on my own, just sat somewhere, because it doesn't matter how drunk you get, got no one there to judge you. So I think if I was in lockdown on my own, I would probably be drinking ridiculous amounts. So I can see that it's very difficult for people who, if you're a social drinker, then I can see it's easier. But I think if you're someone like me who just like to hold themselves up on their own on the sofa and just drink ridiculous amounts of booze, I can see it's almost a license to just keep drinking. And of course, I'm now working from home. So I think that's a license for people as well. They can sit there and do their emails or whatever and have a, drink next to them. So I think for a lot of people who are more insular, it's probably way harder.
Mm.
Yeah, it's being encouraged as well, isn't it? Working from home, there's a lot of work chat Zoom saying bring a glass on, bring a drink to your work chat Zooms. We're doing quite a bit of work on that at the minute, and
I had one the other day where they set a chat up at like a Zoom thing at 4:00, and I'm the only one sat there without alcohol. And they're like, "Oh, what are you drinking?" So, nothing.
Isn't it funny how interested people are in what you're drinking? Like, what's it got to do with you? What's in my glass? Do you know?
It's a weird thing, but I think with people at work, because you have all these weird and wonderful people mixed together and they don't actually have anything in common. So when they come on this Zoom thing, it's almost like no one wants to be there. And the only thing everyone's got in common is they're all drinking alcohol. So it's the only topic of conversation.
So true. What about you, Mandy?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it from a client's sort of side. Obviously, we work mostly with mums, and I think for parents or caregivers, it's very challenging because, there's a lot of pressure. You're trying to do the kind of, the homeschooling, and then, you can't get any space, and, you're trying to like find that little bit of sort of quiet time or just be on your own. And if you're in early sobriety and you're trying to like, break those kind of habits of like that being the release at the end of the day to sort of like right there in bed and sit down, have a glass of wine, then I think it's been really challenging for them. So it's like kind of, again, it's like switching it up and like, right, okay, that what was working for me at that point isn't working right now, so what else can I do? And just shifting, like there's always another solution, of like how you can manage things. And it often, a lot of it is about overwhelm, a lot of it is about boundaries, and a lot of it is about perfectionism. And it's like, just let things go, let them watch the TV, make sure you have a bath, just let that pressure go, and then we get into that, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough, and that kind of negative self-talk. For me, it makes no difference whatsoever, because I have no desire to drink, and it doesn't ever come up for me. I mean, the only thing of living with someone that does drink, I guess I'm more conscious of his drinking, so that brings a bit of anxiety, because it's like, because he's normally away Tuesday to Friday, so God knows what he does when he's not at home, so it's that kind of adjustment of like, okay, but other than that, yeah, it's fine. We've got a couple of sorry, carry on, everybody.
No, I was just going to say, Tawny and Lara, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my partner.
What's going on with me? Sorry.
My Lisa.
I was calling you Tawny and Lara. It's my name, Tawny. So both of you can answer. I didn't mean both.
Well, my partner is also sober, and he says he's like, the thought of drinking alcohol right now makes about as much sense as drinking a cup of bleach. And he says that like year round, not in quarantine. So like that always is in the back of my head, where it's like, we've been sober long enough to where it's like we are very lucky to not feel tempted most of the time. That doesn't mean that there's no temptation, but it's most of the time we're just, we've all, regardless of our recovery paths, we've figured out this toolbox that works for us. And so I love that analogy of like, yeah, like, why would I drink alcohol? Like, I might as well drink bleach, or like it makes no sense. But, it took us a long time to get to this point. I remember, when I was, newly sober and even trying to get sober, and anything that could go wrong was an excuse to get wasted, or anything that went right was also an excuse to get wasted. So I completely understand why people are struggling right now, especially if you're new in sobriety. But, you know, I also think that, you know, it might be a really great time to get sober, because if you're struggling with, you know, the thought of going to your first meeting or your first support group or your first therapy appointment, just walking in can be very overwhelming. But the fact that you can do all of that from the comfort of your home, I think there's probably more people now. I'm making up statistics here, I don't know, but I think there's probably more people that are, you know, at least being curious about it and giving meetings or anything like this a shot, or coming to, you know, an event like this, when they wouldn't have gone to this if they had to like drive there and park and then, you know, get a sitter, and, you know, so like you can do these things now. And so I think it's in a weird way, it's a really great time to get sober.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to take the contrarian view here. I will say that for me, this has been, at the beginning in particular of lockdown, this was the most challenging time I've had with recovery, because it was, like I said, like, you know, it's like shaking the snow globe and everything is different. But where those snowflakes landed on this is exactly the kind of situation that I bottomed out in, right? So I was working from home a ton. I didn't have to go into the office much. And my, like, you know, like William said, like my perfect drinking and at the end cocaine weekend was get into the apartment, you know, meet the dealer early on Friday, get the massive amount of alcohol delivered, 3 packs of cigarettes, whatever it was, lock the door late Friday afternoon and not have to emerge, pull the shades, not emerge again until Monday. And so to me, to be told, you know, okay, all that work stuff you were going to be traveling for and doing this and that, it's off. You're staying home and you're staying locked down. You're not going out anywhere. That is like, that was so triggering to me, in that sense of like, oh my God, it recreated my bottom in a way. And, you know, there was, and I never felt like I was about to drink or I was going to drink or I was going to go take steps, but I was like, whoa, that having that feeling back of like, you know, if you wanted to, you could go do this and, you know, nobody would know.
Nobody would know.
You know, like I said I think I said to Tawny after I moved out to California, I'm like, it's weird in this town because this is a new town and it's a little town we live in. And I'm like, nobody knows me here. I could walk into the bar and order a drink and be like, you know, whatever, any other person on a Tuesday happy hour or something like that. And so it really did, you know, make me have to think about it. And I went back hard to those initial tools, which were like, you know, like I said before, play the tape through. What does it look like? How awful? Let me think about how I felt, you know, physically and waking up that day. I think about, you know, things that I heard very early on. Like I remember struggling at the beginning, and I had a friend who said to me, a sober friend who said to me, listen, you just told me you got 10 problems. If you got 10 problems and you pick up a drink, you have 11 problems. So like that always helps me. I always come back to that. And I went right back. It's funny because when in this more triggering time, like I went right back to the early days. And there used to be this woman in my home group that I went to right when I got sober, and I would come in, and it was a lunchtime thing. She was an older woman, and I would come in and I would be like, oh, this is terrible. That's terrible. I can't this, I can't that, whatever. And she had this really gruff voice. She would look at me. She would be like, did you drink today? And I would be like, no. She'd be like, then it's a perfect day. Like, you're right. The one thing I have to do today is not pick up a drink. Like, can I do that? I'm going to try my best. Just get my head to the pillow. And so it's definitely been it really brought it all home to me in a way that I hadn't even thought about it in so long.
Oh yeah, I can see why though, especially when I read the beginning of your book, had that description. It's like a lockdown. It is. Yeah. Simon, I think you can answer a question here, because I'm pretty sure it was you that had a load of wine in your house when you stopped drinking. Is that right?
Yeah.
You can answer this. Right, Joanne. I was brought up with the idea of waste not, want not. Though I normally drank wine, my spirit of choice was tequila. I've got almost 2 full bottles of quality expensive tequila in my cupboard that I cannot dispose of. Any ideas? Go for it, Simon.
Oh, I think we'll all have ideas on that one, won't we? But first of all, like, I cannot. Why not? Why can't you dispose of it? You could do all sorts. I had a client last week, and she had this expensive bottle of wine in her house, and she's got a huge garden and an air rifle, and her son loves the air rifle, so they videoed it, put the bottle at the end of the garden and shot it and put it on Facebook. But I'm not suggesting to use firearms, but I got the wine in my house after I quit in a box out the front, and I put "free to a good home" on the front of it. It was gone in 15 minutes, and 20 minutes later he was banging on, the guy who took it was banging on the door saying, "Have you got any more of that?" The only thing, I did get criticised in case for potentially not helping someone else's problem. I didn't actually think about that at the time. I was like a week in, and also kids might have picked it up, so just look out the window, I guess. But
was he the right person to ask, Alex, really, after that?
I don't know, firearms and encouraging alcoholism, I'm not sure. I think we'll rewind, yeah.
Also, I suppose you could also, if it's really, really expensive, you could sell it. You could give it to someone you really care about. Well, would you?
Oh yeah.
It's hard, isn't it?
Pour it down the sink. Pour it down the sink and post it.
That's your divorce.
Yeah, do it now. Go pour it away now.
That would be
Pour
mine.
it away and post your video in our group.
It's quite liberating, isn't it? I remember being bought, because I'd left a job at the time I stopped drinking, and somebody had bought me like what was my favourite gin. And it took me ages, like at the beginning, I just found it so difficult. So I really get that. It's like, but I really liked that. And what if, you know? And that's what you've got to ask yourself. Like, why are you keeping it? Because now I could, I'd love it. I want to get them bottles of tequila and pour them out and smash them.
Yeah,
More liberating it is.
You know what we're saying about staying sober to the next live that we're doing? Do a video of pouring it down the sink.
Yeah, post it.
Because that's a real positive affirmation, like, see you later. A bit like my divorce.
The thing is that, for me, like, because, like, I loved red wine, French red wine. My husband we have a wine cellar. I can't go anywhere near it because of the smell. So, yeah. I would just say I would like give it to my husband and get him to pour it away, which he probably wouldn't, but I don't know, I'd have someone else dispose of it. Like, for me it would be a bit challenging to do that, I think. So,
or get an air rifle.
Doesn't it on you as a person whether you can handle pouring it away or whether you can't. But I think I agree with that. I think you will feel free of the chains, because all the time you've got it, you are conditionally sober. You're kind of thinking, well, I'm sober, but that might come in useful one day. It won't. It's going to be the same problem it was for you before you got sober. So, yeah, pour it away or get someone else to pour it away. Tawny, were you going to add something to that?
Yeah, that's, so I blog about sobriety. I've been blogging since day one, sobrietyparty.com. And, I did like a photo shoot with me getting rid of my Jack Daniels. In early sobriety, I held on to this big bottle, like a huge bottle of Jack Daniels. It was maybe a quarter full, but I just kept it because I don't know, like it was like, I liked knowing that I have it in the house, but I'm strong enough to say no. Like, I made this like really difficult hurdle for myself for no reason. But finally I was like, okay, I've got to get rid of this. Like, why do I have this? So I had a friend of mine who's a photographer. We did a whole photo shoot of me pouring out my Jack Daniels. And they're some of my favorite pictures because I'm really glad I documented it, because it's such a personal, empowering moment to pour out or get rid of whatever it is. Getting rid of it is just such a huge gift that you can give yourself. And, I even wanted to keep the bottle. Like, that's, because, like, a bottle of Jack Daniels is so rock and roll to me. I was Googling, like, uses for Jack Daniels bottles. And I was like, oh, well, whenever I get married, keep in mind, I was very single. It's like, but when I get married, maybe I could put flowers in these. And, like, I was like, why why am I so obsessed? So I just finally threw it away. But like, it's so fascinating, the mental gymnastics that we go through to just keep the liquor or keep the bottle. Like, why?
Yeah, it's like souvenir almost, isn't it? It's like keeping.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's almost, yeah, like you say, it's creating a bit of an obstacle for yourself, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Joanne,
Like, if I had drinking in early sobriety, and that voice was saying I fancy a drink, that would be a real temptation for me, because it's there. So that's personally, for me, we're all different, but I would have, well, I did get rid of it. I got rid of all of it. You know, I even put it in black bin liners and just chucked it in the bin because I couldn't have it around.
Joanne said she would get rid of it, but needs someone to do the filming. Surely you can prop your phone.
Self-timer.
Self-timer,
That feels like an excuse to me. I want to see
Yeah,
that.
Come on, Joanne, we're not having that. Get rid of it.
You can prop the phone up, definitely.
She's gonna be like, oh my God, I'm leaving the group.
I would love to video it, but I need someone to do it filming. If you're not, like, as Simon says, prop it up. I want to see it now.
Selfie time.
Yeah, that's what a selfie is. Come on, you can do it.
We've got a question for you, Lisa.
For Lisa.
Go on, Mandy.
American Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Yeah. So it says, I'm a lawyer in the US, like you, Bar, and curious how you handled being around clients after you stopped drinking. My clients are heavy drinking insurance adjusters. I can sometimes get by with a fake drink, tonic, lime, splash of bitters, and then leave early from an event, or go later when everyone else is pretty buzzed and they don't notice that I'm not drinking. Any tips? I need to socialize with my clients and have been sober for 9 months, but I haven't come out to many people. Dinners are difficult when everyone is drinking, and a glass of water or unused wine glass would be noticed. I mean, I think this relates to everyone, right? I mean, it's difficult, that the work thing, you know. So Lisa, if you could,
So thank you for that question. And yeah, I was in a lot of uncomfortable those sorts of situations, and I realized that well, first of all, I had this book, Living Sober, which is something they give you very early, which had the ideas, like, I had no idea what the person mentioned about, you could go to a cocktail party late, you could leave early. I was like, what? You can do that? Like, that's a thing? And that is very effective. And it goes to sort of the next thing, when somebody would say to me, because I agree, that dinner where there's the waiter coming around pouring the wine and you say, none for me. I would say, I learned pretty quickly to say, if somebody would say, oh, you're not drinking? And I would say, not tonight. And like, that sort of answered it in a way that seemed to somehow be okay for people. And not that it was my job to make them comfortable, but I sort of felt that way. And then as I was paying attention, I realized that I was one of those people who would have been like, why aren't you drinking? And it really had nothing to do with the other person. It was all about me. Like, I need to feel like I'm doing, the cool thing now, the acceptable thing. So it tends to be the people who are struggling themselves or have some sort of issue who go heavy on it. I feel like now there are more, and the other thing that I did, to be honest, I had checked myself into detox at the end because I was like physically really badly addicted, and I'd been 24/7 around the clock for like 18 months. And I knew I needed a medicated detox, but I wasn't willing to tell. And, the first thing I did was email my office and say, had a medical emergency over the weekend. I'm not going to be in this week, but please don't worry about me. I'm in the hospital, so I'll be out of touch, but I'm all good. And that way I knew they couldn't contact me. And then as soon as I got back, of course, people were like, oh, let me catch up on last week. Let's go for a drink, because I refused to go to long-term inpatient because I was afraid of people knowing. And, this was 2004 also. And what I basically said was, I'm on, I was like, oh, I can't drink, I'm on medication, which flowed from, you were in the hospital and now you're on some medication that you can't drink on. Oh, and people would be like, that sucks. And, I am not above saying whatever it takes to, feel like you're, you're the one who has to get comfortable with it. Like, them getting comfortable with it is irrelevant. Although it takes a while to sort of feel that way. But, you know, anything now, I feel like there's so many reasons now that people, I still would use a not tonight kind of thing. But there's so many reasons now that people aren't drinking. They're doing dry January or sober October, or they're training for a race or whatever. I would have certainly not been past saying something like, you know what, I'm training for something, and so I'm not drinking this month, and let people be like, oh, that sucks for you. That's fine, but you don't owe them any explanation. And there are things like, you don't owe them, to be honest, to me, if someone's prying on or really is going to be judgy about why I'm not drinking at a particular thing, I don't owe them honesty. I owe them what I need to do to not drink that night. And that's really about it.
I think that's really valid, because at the beginning I was an excuse maker, because especially if you're not going to see those people again, or not going to see them for a long time, and it's almost like Kate's traffic light thing. You don't have to give everybody the whole story, do you? You can just, no, I'm not drinking tonight. That's that. Anything, you know, no, not even one. And William, I know you're in-law as well, so you have a very similar experience with that. But you just say, I'm not drinking tonight.
Yeah, that's my stock thing, is I don't fancy it, because I think if you start trying to make excuses, so, oh, I'm going for a run in the morning, people say, oh, but, you know, don't give it a miss. Or if you're driving, they say get a taxi. But I think if you, like Lisa, if you just say, you know, I don't really fancy drinking tonight, it really puts a brick wall there, because people can't say much to that. They can't say, yes, you do fancy drinking tonight. I would just echo that. It's your body, and you decide what goes into it. You don't owe anyone either an explanation or feel any obligation to take anything you don't want to take. Having said that, if it is going to be an issue, so drinking something like lemonade, because no one knows what's in it, and unless someone specifically asks, they don't know what's in, you know. And I find I've come full circle, because I was working somewhere once where we weren't allowed to drink at lunchtime, so I'd go and order gin and tonics and pass it off as lemonade, and now I'm doing it the other way round. That you can do that. And I've actually been in a restaurant before where you're kind of talking and the wine waiter's come round and just filled my glass up. And it depends how strong you are with it, but for me, I'm not tempted, and I've just left it, because it cuts the people look at you and they see some red wine in a glass and they assume you're drinking. They don't notice if you never pick that glass up because the waiter's constantly coming around and topping up. Those glasses tend to stay much the same level anyway. So there's ways and means of cutting it dead and just making it a lot lower key. But I think you just need to, just remember that you don't owe anyone an explanation at all. It's up to you what you do.
Yeah,
and also you can
work function early on, that classic, like they pass you the champagne and that like into the plant. You know, or take it to the bathroom, the toilet, and then just like put it down the sink. You know, it's like,
you'll just put it down somewhere. I've done that before. I've been handed a glass of champagne and held it for a few minutes and then put it down on a worktop somewhere and just wandered off.
You know, I was at a wedding in about a week after getting sober, and I didn't want to tell anybody because of my situation at the time, and I mention this every week, and I'm sure I'm boring people, but for anyone who doesn't know, I'd had a miscarriage, and one of the things I wanted to avoid was anybody asking me if I was pregnant. And I decided to stop drinking. So what I did was, at the very beginning of the night, I took, you know, the little bottles of non-alcoholic Prosecco. I took it to one bar person and said, whatever happens, this is mine. I don't want alcohol in my drink. I have to be able to rely on you and trust you to do that. And he was just like, absolutely. I ended up not actually having it. It didn't occur. But I just felt a bit safer knowing that if champagne came out, my glass would be filled and I'd get that non-alcoholic drink too.
Yeah, Kate's done that before. That's one of her tips, is like, you know, put a bottle behind the bar and make a relationship with that a barman and just be like, I'm coming to you. This is our deal. I think that can be really helpful.
I was going to say as well, in the context of the work environment and work meetings, if you have got a level of control in most or some situations as well, so it might be that you actually say, well, could we meet in this upmarket coffee shop, or could we go somewhere else where alcohol's not even on the agenda? So, I mean, obviously sometimes that may not be you can't avoid it, but if possible, you could actually, or change the time, or can I do lunchtime here rather than evening time there? So, just sometimes you could push back.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. We've got lots of really nice comments. So Jenny Lee Grace says, lovely to catch you, Lisa. You were on my podcast last year. So she says hello. Simon, there's lots of love coming in from Barbara. She says,
Barbara's doing amazing.
She said she's 32 days sober and it's because of these wonderful sessions. And Simon.
Oh, well done.
Hugs and happy Saturday. We do have one other question, if I can put this one out, and then whoever wants to answer it. I was alcohol free for 200 days. Then my auntie who'd helped me get sober suddenly passed away in March. I started drinking again, but do not understand why, as I didn't really want to, but it almost felt like I did it to punish myself. Or did I just find an excuse to start drinking again? That's a tough one. Who wants to take it?
Well, I can start. Well, I'd say, like, for the first thing, let yourself off the hook. That's an extremely painful experience to go to, and I mean, one of the things that I knew I had to stop drinking was that I knew that if someone that I loved died, then I would obliterate myself with alcohol. And it was one of those things that I couldn't deny. And so I knew that I had a problematic relationship with it. The thing about kind of self, doing yourself harm, I relate to that because I think I did that a lot. And I think that's kind of a trauma response. And, when you are in pain, it's like sometimes feels easier to create more pain, because it's diverting from what's going on. So, the pain that you were feeling from grief, it's like, it's kind of a way of self-protection in a way, is like to create another motor of pain to try and alleviate that. So, like a lot of kind of love and self-compassion to you, and, and it was a way that you coped, and, but you can work with that, and you can work with that feeling now, and just know that you don't need to do that to yourself anymore. And it's okay to sit with the pain, and you will get better. Like, pain and grief goes up and down, but alcohol isn't going to help that situation. It's not going to heal it. It's going to leave that wound open. And so the more that you can look after yourself and nourish yourself, then the better that you will be able to kind of rebuild yourself, because grief is extremely hard. So
it's really complicated as well, isn't it? I mean, I know Lisa and I talk a lot. So Lisa's been sober for 2 years almost. I'm 1, and my dad's been dead for 11 years now. Lisa lost her dad early in sobriety, her stepdad 20 years ago, Lisa, and her grandma quite early on as well. And the grief just comes back, like you were saying. So even after all that time getting sober, all of a sudden, when there's nothing numbing that out, those raw emotions do come up. And I think if you've been sober for a while, you'll already know that that's going to happen. So it's a way of stopping you actually dealing with the problem in some ways as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It can be quite eye-opening, I think, when you've not drunk. I mean, I couldn't believe that I cried all over again. And I mean real crying, not like crying on the day of the funeral, real crying for things that I had lost, and grieving. I didn't know I could grieve like that, but I did. And I grieved in sobriety, and you will, and you can do it. It's just like, I guess we've gone full circle. It's finding new coping mechanisms for trauma and for difficult times, and finding new ways of doing it. And exercise was my thing. Lisa meditates. I know we've all got our own little tools for that, but what would you do instead of drinking if you were dealing with a really difficult situation? I know I would just go and run. That's what I'd do. Be running until my head cleared. What would everybody else be doing in that situation to try to cope?
I think allowing as well, I know we've said this before, but I think it's so important to allow yourself to be sad. That's been such a big lesson to me, instead of covering it up all the time. And I remember when I did lose my dad early when I just got sober, and again, I personally didn't really want to pick up a drink at that time, but I remember really just it was like a big relief to allow myself to be sad and say, you know what, you're having a shit time. It's okay. And I think for me, that just really helped. And I always say, I know you say it, but meditation, it just helped me so much, even to just kind of get out of my head, like Lisa and Tawny have said before, just coming out of your head for a short amount of time, but allow yourself to just feel.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Lisa. In my first year of sobriety, I lost both of my grandmothers, and I was very close to both of them. I have a very small family, and it was devastating. I mean, loss is hard. Like it's really hard. And you know, I got through it by taking it one day at a time, and sometimes 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. And, you know, whoever commented that they're going through this, I'm so sorry for your loss. And, you know, give yourself grace. Like, and these, you know, we stop drinking, but life keeps happening. And we have to figure out tools to deal with reality. And it's really hard, and it's unpleasant sometimes, especially through a time grieving someone that you're close to is awful. But you know, you have to take it one day at a time, and you have to give yourself grace, let yourself feel, you know, you're a human being who's going through something that's awful, and let yourself feel that.
And also, I think they said that it was their aunt that helped them get sober. They were sober with their aunt. Like, when the time feels right, it might be that you actually look to draw strength from that in a kind of, well, I'm doing it in her honour. You know, I'm drawing strength from that, and that's going to be a driver and a motivator for me going forward. Maybe, I don't know what the situation is, but you could almost sort of turn that into something to drive you forward, possibly.
I agree.
I find that
question here.
I'm sorry. I had
okay, you go, Lisa.
In my second year sober, one of my best friends died suddenly, and I also lost my father 6 years ago. And in those processes, it was funny for me in that time, and I realize now that I went like right into, when I found out my friend died, I was immediately like, okay, where are his kids? What can I do? Go get go hang out with the boys, help distract them. Like, I realized it took me out of my head. And when my father was diagnosed, and it was 5.5 weeks from when he was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer to when he passed away, you know, I threw the blow up mattress down in my parents' place, and I was like, okay, I'm here. What do we do? I took charge. Like, I went right into this service mode that I didn't expect. I don't know why it happened for me that way. And the grief came later. And I found like that when the grief hit me, when I stopped moving and the grief hit me, that was when I felt closer to drinking over it, or thinking about feeling that way where I might drink. And I think, you know, what everybody sort of said, like that, it was the first time with those 2 deaths that I had ever been sober to go through that. And it was so strange to me to be just sitting alone and weeping like that. I never did that. And I, you know, had to give myself permission to do that, and it didn't seem natural. So I think I get why it's so hard, and why the, you know, that mode is like, you know, okay, I'm back to drinking now. What do, you know, it's like, it is okay to feel that grief and just let it come out. You know, in the case of my friend, it took 4 years before I really felt that.
I just want to acknowledge this as well. Joanne has poured her tequila away.
Yay!
All right.
So well done, Joanne. There's a couple of other comments that, again, I'd like to acknowledge, because I think it's very brave that they've commented on. So Joanne, again, she said that her daughter's suicide led to her heavier drinking 3 years ago to numb her. And I think that's very common, isn't it? When you want to numb something out, and something that tragic. You know, I think, Joanne, just want you to know, from all of us here, to have gone through that, to be sober and be pouring your drink away today, you've obviously travelled a massive journey.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Amazing.
Martha, Martha's going for a scan tomorrow. Depending on the results, it could be the worst diagnosis possible. I know I won't drink. Well, I hope I don't. But any suggestions? Before we finish up, have we got any suggestions for Martha? What kind of things she can do tomorrow? Hopefully that result isn't awful, but you know, if it is, what can she do?
Just reach out, get support. You know, who do you trust? Who do you have? If you don't have people that you feel confident in your, you know, immediate circle, then rely upon us, rely upon sober communities. Like, there's always going to be someone that will be there to talk to you, to, you know, hold your hand virtually and kind of support you, I suppose. David?
Well, if you could reach out to us tomorrow, couldn't she? We can suggest
Yeah.
that, you know. Keep us in the loop, Martha, and let us all know how you're getting on.
Yeah, there's lots of us that let us help you.
She's such a light for everybody, Martha. I know she's in our other group, isn't she? And she puts and gives a lot to so many people. So please do reach out to us tomorrow, Martha, because I think, like I said, we'll all be here.
Everything crossed for you, Martha. All right. Just thank you, Lisa and Tony, for agreeing to come on. I think today's chat's been absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
We've covered a lot there.
Yeah, it's so lovely to have you both on and like give up your time for it.
Before they go, I know these two are really into music, and after listening to their podcast, they always ask each other something about what song relates to sobriety. So can we have that before you go?
Tawny, you want to go first? We were talking about our favorite when we were talking before. Believe it or not, even though we were late, which we are very sorry for that we got confused, we had planned. We were like, what are we going to talk about music-wise? And we said we would talk about our favorite British band, the Rolling Stones.
Yeah,
Yes.
Lisa and I have seen the Rolling Stones separately and together.
Wow.
And
We went together, yeah.
we love the Stones, and we still think Mick Jagger's the sexiest man alive.
Yeah.
Other than Dave.
Hello.
We say it as a question.
I actually bumped into Ronnie Wood about a month ago.
Wow.
Literally walked round the corner, and he's sober, and he was walking out of a pub, but obviously, and I was like so shocked. I went, Ronnie. He went, hello, and I thought, you should have a selfie with him. What? Yeah, he's lovely.
I didn't say this that I normally don't say, but I have met Mick Jagger 3 times in 3 totally random, separate stalker-like situations. And I once held up the bathroom that Keith Richards was waiting to walk into. And I opened the door and I went, sorry, Keith. And he said, no worries, love. But we did, like, Tawny and I got to go see the Stones last summer before I left New York, and we went together and we went sober and we like had the best time. I mean, who would have thought when I was sitting home drinking, you know, and using Coke by myself that like 16 years later I'd be with, you know, my friend Tawny, who I had no idea existed, and we would be, you know, just killing it at a sober Stone show. So
You're probably the only sober people there, but we had a great time.
I bet you had the best
That
time.
may be
You remember
true.
it. You remember
That
it.
is so cool. I've got,
Yeah, we
I don't know
remember
why. I get goose pimples over the weirdest things, and that does just give me goose pimples.
Lisa,
Well, it shows us anything's possible.
It is.
my Lisa, you've got to do the goodbye. You know I'm no good at it.
See you later, everyone.
Oh, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you.
You've been awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.